Imagine being kicked out of a restaurant just because of who you are. That's exactly what happened to a black woman who walked into a high-end eatery, expecting a simple meal. But when the waiter saw her, he didn't offer her a menu or a seat. Instead, he told her to leave, without any explanation. Shocked, confused, and humiliated, she left. Little did he know, this wasn't just any woman. She was the daughter of the restaurant's owner. As the story unfolds, we dive deep into what happened next, how the owner reacted when he found out, and the shocking consequences that followed. Stay tuned because this is a story about prejudice, power, and a twist no one saw coming. What will happen when the truth comes to light? Keep watching to find out. The woman, named Maya, had been a regular at the restaurant for years, though she often kept to herself, enjoying quiet meals away from the crowd. Her father, the restaurant owner, had built the place from the ground up, and Maya had always supported him in the background, helping with the business when needed. But her identity wasn't known to many of the staff. The waiter, a young man named Ethan, had no idea who she was. He assumed she was just another customer, and his assumption led to a rash decision that would soon have serious consequences. Maya, stunned by the incident, wasn't one to make a scene. She quietly left, but in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling of being unfairly treated. She decided to return the next day, but this time, she was determined to see how deep the disrespect went. Would the staff recognize her, or would they turn her away again? The next day, Maya returned to the restaurant, not as a guest, but with a quiet, burning determination. She stepped in, scanning the familiar surroundings, but everything felt different now. Ethan was there, bustling behind the counter, completely unaware that the woman he'd kicked out the day before was standing in front of him. He didn't seem to recognize her at first, and as she walked up to the counter, his friendly smile vanished when he saw her. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his tone shifting, now a bit guarded. Maya didn't answer right away. She could see him trying to keep his cool, but there was something in his eyes, fear, maybe guilt. She leaned in slightly, making sure he saw her face clearly. "I think you remember me," she said, her voice steady but cold. Ethan's face turned pale. I didn't mean." His words stumbled, but Maya cut him off. "Do you always treat your customers like that?" Maya wasn't just confronting Ethan. She was challenging everything, the assumptions people made based on appearance, the way race and class shaped interactions. She wanted him to understand that this wasn't a small mistake. It was a reflection of a much larger issue. Ethan's embarrassment only deepened, and in the back, she noticed a few other staff members whispering and exchanging nervous glances. The tension in the air was thick. Meanwhile, her father, the owner, was away on a business trip. Maya had always kept a low profile, but now she could feel the weight of the restaurant's legacy on her shoulders. She couldn't let this go, not when it had been built on principles of hard work and inclusivity. But even more, she couldn't ignore the discomfort building inside her. Would her father support her? Would the other staff take her side? And what if Ethan was just one small part of a much larger problem within the restaurant? Her heart raced as she stood there, knowing the situation was far from over. Ethan was looking at her, caught between regret and fear. But Maya knew one thing for sure. She wasn't backing down. Not this time. Maya stood there, her gaze unwavering, as Ethan tried to compose himself. He fidgeted with a napkin, clearly struggling to find the right words, but nothing seemed to come out. The silence stretched on, thick with tension. Maya's eyes flickered over to the other staff members who had gathered in the corner, watching the scene unfold like it was a quiet storm about to break. The restaurant was usually filled with the low hum of conversations and the clinking of silverware, but today it felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. She could feel every eye on her, judging, questioning, waiting for her to make the next move. Her fingers tightened into fists, her pulse quickening. Just then, the door swung open with a familiar creak, and in walked her father. His face lit up when he saw her, but as he noticed the tension in the room, his smile faltered. He saw Ethan, still standing awkwardly by the counter, and the growing discomfort among the staff. Maya could see the confusion in her father's eyes as he walked toward them. Ethan immediately stood straighter, nervously glancing between father and daughter. Maya didn't say a word. She just stepped aside, letting her father approach. The tension was palpable as her father stopped just a few feet away, looking from Maya to Ethan. Without a word, Maya's father turned his gaze to the other employees. She could tell they were all waiting for someone to say something, to explain what was happening. Ethan cleared his throat, attempting to break the silence. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know who she was. I thought she was just another customer. Her father didn't answer immediately. He looked at Maya, and in that moment, she could see the questions in his eyes. Had she told him everything? Had he known about the incident with Ethan? Was he ready to confront the reality that something much bigger might be going on in his restaurant? Did you ask her why she was here? Her father asked finally, his voice low but cutting through the silence. Ethan's face flushed, his nerves on display for everyone to see. I just assumed. Maya could feel her father's disappointment without him saying another word. She knew he was trying to understand how something like this could happen under his roof. But it wasn't just about Ethan's mistake. It was about something deeper, something systemic. As Maya's father turned to face the staff, she realized how fragile the situation had become. Everything was about to change. Either Ethan would face the consequences of his actions, or the restaurant would have to reckon with its own culture of bias and blind spots. The room held its collective breath, waiting for Maya's father to make his move. But before anyone could speak again, the door opened once more, this time with a force that sent a chill through the room. A woman Maya didn't recognize stepped in, her expression sharp, eyes scanning the room. She wasn't just any woman, she was someone with authority. Someone who might just tip the scales of this already volatile moment. The woman who entered the restaurant was tall, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that screamed power. She moved with an air of authority, her sharp eyes quickly assessing the scene. There was something unsettling about her presence, like a storm on the horizon, one that no one could avoid. Maya froze as the woman's gaze landed on her. For a moment, it felt like time slowed down, as if everything had shifted into slow motion. "Is there a problem here?" the woman asked, her voice calm but laced with an undeniable tension. Maya's father looked at the woman, his expression flickering between recognition and surprise. "Diana," he muttered, almost as if he hadn't expected her to show up today. Diana, Maya's mind raced. She knew that name but couldn't place it. It clicked after a second. Diana was the restaurant's largest investor. She had been a silent partner, someone Maya's father had brought in years ago to help the business grow. But what was she doing here now? Diana's gaze shifted to Maya, and for the first time, a faint trace of a smile played at the corners of her lips, though it was far from friendly. "I see the problem," she said, her eyes narrowing at Maya. "This is the kind of chaos that doesn't belong in a place like this." Maya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Was she talking about her? The way Diana looked at her made it clear that she didn't just think Maya was a part of the problem. She thought Maya was the problem. Before anyone could say anything else, Diana turned to Ethan, who was still standing uncomfortably by the counter. "And you," she said, voice smooth but with a sharp edge. "You've just created a whole mess for all of us, haven't you?" Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Diana raised a hand, silencing him. It's not just the bad press that we have to worry about, she continued, now addressing the entire room. It's the bigger picture. We've got a reputation to uphold, and this place needs to reflect that. Maya's father looked at Diana, his face growing tight. We've always run things with integrity, he said quietly, though there was a hint of defensiveness in his voice. Diana raised an eyebrow. Integrity is one thing, she replied smoothly, but profit is another. And when you've got people causing issues with your brand. She cut her sentence short as her eyes flicked to Maya. Especially people who clearly don't fit the image we've built. The words hit Maya like a slap. She felt her heart race, the heat of her anger rising, but she kept herself in check. Diana was targeting her, and Maya knew this wasn't just about an isolated incident with Ethan. This was personal.